Okay, now let me pull the plastic off this thing so you can see I'm really opening the box live on camera so we can see exactly what's in the box. Okay? And my camera's as far away from this thing as I can get it, so it barely fits on frame. Now, there's my trash can. Opening this box, where is it open? It's going to open in some weird location for me. Yep, on the side flaps. Oh, isn't this fun? It opens weird. Sorry about bumping the tripod there. Okay, we have our paperwork, warranty against defects, warranty guide, the instruction guide, quick start guide, and how to put everything together. And it's going to show us what everything is. We'll come back to this because we need to read that. Okay? I'm one of those people that reads directions. Well, it depends what I'm doing, but stuff like this I'll read directions. So inside the box, we have fans. Okay, these are pretty similar to the fans I showed earlier in an earlier video, and I'm going to save for now. I was really waiting for the case to get into this too much. These are SP120 fans. These are SP120 fans. These are LED lit. These are not. Okay? Now, there have been some complaints about these fans, and when I did my reading, I saw the complaints, and I bought some extra fans. Now, I may still have these complaints. One of the complaints are they're not very quiet. The other complaint, and I'm going to tend to agree with that complaint by looking at it right now, and yep, I got the same issue with this one. The difference between this and this is, well, this fan is clear. This fan is not. That's because this has an LED light that's blue on it, and this does not. Okay, the fan blades are a little bit more stout here than this one, but this is an SP fan, and this is an SP fan, so they should be pretty equivalent. The connector cable is 4-pin here. The connector cable here is 3-pin. So that might be an issue because 4-pin to 3-pin. I might be stuck using these. I doubt it though. There's ways around everything if you're careful. So what we have are two fans here. Now the complaints about the fans I'll show you in a minute. Let me get everything out of here. Here we got our mounting brackets. Now there are some extra mounting brackets that go with this thing, mainly due to the weight of it, and you have to put the mounting bracket on the back of the motherboard for this to mount right. And then you got this thing wrapping around like this. Okay? Now, I'm not going to remove the plastic from this end of it because it's already got the thermal paste on there. So you remove the plastic cover and you just put it on the CPU. No worried about thermal paste, no nothing. I know some of you remove that thermal paste and replace it. I probably won't, to be honest with you. I'm not all that worried about it too much. I am going to remove this plastic because I want to get to this part. Okay? Here's the radiator, and it comes with the liquid already in there. So there's no worrying about liquid, no nothing. If you're rough with it, you know, you don't want to be rough with it. You don't want to get a leak going. So I'm going to be kind of gentle with it. Now, here's where the criticism comes in with fans. When you mount that fan on there, you can see that the fan blades are running around the case pretty good. And what they're complaining about is that the bracket for the fan doesn't cover completely. Okay? What I mean by doesn't... Here, I gotta get the box out of here because this isn't going to work with that box in there. Okay? Get the box out of here. Now, what they're talking about is that this fan bracket doesn't completely cover the radiator. If I put both fans side by side, and these are pretty much the same size fans, same form factor, look at the gap right there. What happens is when this fan's trying to push air through, some air can come back up through these gaps. And that's what some people are complaining about, and they're saying you need to get a full box fan. Now, if the fan's doing its job properly, and it's pushing air or pulling air properly, that shouldn't be that big of an issue. Because this area around the fan that's not caged is very small. And it shouldn't reflect things too much. Okay? So there's a look at it. Okay, it's a radiator just like a car radiator. Boy, I'm knocking the camera. I'm doing bad camera work tonight. It's a radiator just like a car radiator. Your case better be suited for this. The current case I have is not suited for this. I'd have to modify the case heavily to get this to work. So I'm not going to use my current case. I bought a new case just to avoid getting out the Dremel and drilling holes and stuff. I'm going to put this back in the box real quick so I'm not janking it around too much. We're going to talk more about that part of it in a little bit. What I need to talk about now is fans, okay? On the fans, there should be an arrow somewhere indicating airflow. Most fans have this arrow indicating the direction of airflow. I found it. It's right here. So let me zoom this in so we can see this. Okay? Now that indicates airflow should be going that way through the fan. It should be going that way through the fan. So air's going to come in on this side and out this side. So air's coming out on that label side. In other words, air's coming out on the side with the motor, not the side with the fan blades. And I suspect it's doing the same on this one, if we can find it on this one. You've got to be labeled somewhere. I don't want to have to plug you in and find out what you're doing. I can do it, I just don't want to do it. You're not labeled. Either that or I'm blind and I'm not seeing it. Which wouldn't surprise me. Getting old sucks. You can't see things, you can't feel things. Getting up in the morning sometimes is not fun. Exercising definitely loses its appeal. You don't want to run in the morning. Okay, not finding it at all. So I'm going to have to check the documentation on the bonus fans because I don't see an arrow anywhere on which way the airflow is going. Okay, so let's talk about push versus pull. Okay? What is better for airflow, push versus pull? If you start looking these things up, you're going to find people talking about push versus pull, okay? What we mean by push versus pull, and I'm going to use a surrogate for the coolers because I don't really want to get that cooler back out. And there is no documentation on these clear fans, which is kind of sucky. Just have a warranty against defects. No documentation on them. No arrows indicating direction. Which means plug them in to figure out which way they're going. I'm almost willing to bet they go the same direction as this one. Because look, it's the same body. It'll be the same motor. It's just different fan blades. Okay? That's all it is it's different fan blades. So most likely they're moving the same direction. It would be a safe assumption. The only difference is 3-pin versus 4-pin. Okay? Now, there is documentation on the back, but I'm not sure which way it says. Push versus pull. Anyhow, let's talk about push versus pull. So we're going to use the box as a surrogate. Okay? And let me zoom this back because I don't need to be zoomed in completely. So let's say this box represents the radiator. And we know which way the air is moving on this one. I'm going to find the arrow again just to verify before I put it down. But I can't find the arrow on this one again. I'm having a fun day, aren't I? This is what you get for being live and being unprepared. The arrow's right there. Okay? So if I put it on this, I'm pulling air through the radiator because the air is moving this way. We're pulling air through the radiator. Okay? Since the fan says it's blowing this way. If I put it this way, I'm pushing air into the radiator. That's what they mean by push versus pull. You push air into the radiator or you pull air through the radiator. Now, from what I read and what I've seen on the internet, push versus pull is irrelevant. You get the same amount of cooling either way. The only way to up the cooling is to put a fan on each side. One pushing and one pulling, so they're both pushing the air through the radiator in the same direction. Okay? And that's the only way to increase cooling. Now, I'm not going to be worried about that so much. Now, I know why there's no arrow on this fan. You know why the arrow's missing on this fan? Because the wiring covers it up. Okay? If I put this fan in the same orientation as that one there, I should be able to see my arrows right here. Okay, we're off camera. If I put the fan in the same orientation, the arrow should be right there, and we got an LED right there. So I can't see it. What I'm about to do is bust out a power supply and plug this in and see which way it goes. Okay? And that'll be fun. I'll have to look up the voltage. I have a power supply, so I can do that. I have a bench supply. But anyhow, the only way to up the airflow, I'm sorry I'm so distracted. The only way to up the airflow is to put 2 fans on there. And that will up the cooling, but not a whole lot. I know from research that the case I bought won't handle a fan on either side. So either I do push or pull. Now, let's talk about the advantages of this. Right now, we're pushing the air into the cooler. What is wrong with pushing the air into the cooler here? Anyone have any ideas? Well, I do. We're going to take all the dirt that's in there and push it right into that cooler. That acts just like a big filter. By pushing all that air full of impurities into that cooler, the cooler acts as a big dust trap. And eventually, you get a bunch of dust caught between your fan and your cooler. So pushing the air into the cooler is not what you want to do, because then every once in a while you have to remove all the fans and you have to clean the grid of the cooler. If we pull the air through this way, all the air traps on the cooler side down here, which is easier to get at because there is no fan in the way, and you can clean that off easier. So that's the only advantage to push and pull. You want to pull the air through the cooler in the setup, not the setup I have there, the setup here where the air is moving this way. So all the dirt gets trapped on the cooler face, and it's easier to clean off than being trapped between the fan and the cooler. That's what the research I did come up with. So I want to pull the air through the cooler. Okay? Cooling is not affected either way, according to the websites I read. So, to make a long story short, what we want to do is water cool if we're going to have any performance in the computer. Air cooling is fine as long as you're not trying to overclock. The minute you overclock, you're going to get too hot. So you don't want to air cool if you're going to overclock. If you're not going to overclock, get the air cooler, spend the $20, because an air cooler is $20, $25. That's pretty cheap. Okay? Push versus pull, that's kind of irrelevant. We don't care about that. Okay? The only difference is if you pull the air through the cooler, the dust collects on the cooler face, not between the fan and the cooler. So I want my air going this way through. I want my air going into the cooler first and then through the fan. That way the dirt collects on the cooler and is easier to get off. I have 2 ginormous cats in this house. I don't want the cat fur collecting between the fan and the cooler. It takes too much effort to get that undone and cleaned up. Okay? So I want the air going this way and out this way. Now, let's talk about the directions. Let's go through the directions, shall we? So we know what's going on with this. Now that we've talked about push versus pull and how we want to set this thing up. Okay? So I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit so the directions are pretty much framed and everyone can see what the directions look like. Okay? First thing, it says what's included in the hardware. We have a bunch of different screws. And we have 2 fans. We have a bunch of washers. We have a couple of different brackets. And we have this cable right here. Okay? And the cable is a link cable. It's a link cable for USB. Now all that is in this hardware bag right here. I'm not going to go through and verify that until assembly time. But just glancing at it, it looks like all of that is there, including that USB cable. Okay? Now the USB cable is a little bit different than this pictured. No, it's not. It's exactly this pictured here. It's just a lot longer. All right? So we've got to look at what the directions say are in the box. We turn the page. It says installing the Intel Black backplate. For this cooler, we have to have a backplate on the motherboard. The backplate's included. Okay? And I want to read this and see if I put the CPU in first. Okay? It says put the backplate on, install the assembled backplate, and then we go to the next page. Now, one thing about the backplate, and we're going to go over this more because I'm going to videotape some of the assembly, is on the backplate, and I can get it out of here. it has sliders, okay? These sliders, oh, I didn't break it. Hopefully I didn't break it. It feels like I broke it. I didn't break it. They snap in and out. These sliders can adjust depending on your motherboard, because different motherboards are going to have slightly different screw setups. And it's always that way. It's just how life is. So they put adjustments in there, so I can move these mounting holes around to match my motherboard. Okay. So this next page, page 2, starts talking about putting the standoffs in there. Okay. And it talks about Intel standoffs, and it says which one to use for which socket. So this thing's designed for multiple sockets. I have a socket 1156, if I remember correctly. So, and I have to look. I'm looking at the motherboard right now. It doesn't say on there, but I'm pretty sure it's 1156. It'll say in the motherboard notes, and it'll tell me which standoff to use, here or here. Okay, install the fans and radiator. That's the next thing. Okay, this is going to be a little bit case dependent. I know with my case, the fans have to go on top of the radiator because there isn't room for the fans and the radiator inside the case. The case has a riser on the top of it to accommodate this cooler and the fans. And it doesn't have to be this cooler. That case will handle any 240 millimeter cooler. Okay, installing the pump unit. And that's pretty much just bolting it down to the pins you put in earlier. So the CPU should be pre-installed before you this. Connecting the power and the fans to the pump. Now, it does have 3-pin versus 4-pin, so I'm going to be okay using my 3-pin fans. It has a setup for 3-pin versus 4-pin. And that's if I don't mind if I use the Corsair software to control the cooler. My motherboard has a built-in spot for these coolers and fans, so the motherboard can control it, and I'm probably going to go that route instead of using this provided USB cable to connect it to a USB port. One, that's going to eat up a USB port that I may want to use for something else. Two, by using the motherboard stuff, I can use the motherboard temperature gauges, I can use the motherboard everything, controllers, and let the motherboard control the pumps and the fan. And my motherboard does have a spot for a water pump. It does have a connector for a water pump. And turning the page, connect the pump to the USB header, so you connect everything USB header. Now, the one thing I won't be able to do if I connect this in the motherboard is control the color of the USB that's on this water pump. There is a USB in that water pump that has a different color situation going. It lights up. I want everything to be blue. If that's red and everything else is blue, I'm not going to care. Okay? And it might be able to adapt it for different colors, for different temperatures. I don't know. I haven't played with it. Now, next up is for AMD. I'm not really worried about an AMD installation because I don't have an AMD processor, but I'll go ahead and turn this page by page just so everyone can take a look and see what it says for AMD. And you're going to have to make some adjustments for the AMD on the CPU cooling block from the looks of it. Okay? Now, the next couple of pages, installing it in the case and all that, will be the same. Installing the water pump unit, all that's going to be the same. Because once you get the mounting brackets done, you're doing the same job. Okay? And then there's facts and everything. Now, this doesn't look like it comes with a CD for the software on the CPU. I mean, on the water pump and the cooler. So there's got to be a link somewhere where I can download this stuff. And it says, note, most newer cases include a CPU cutout to allow access to the bottom of the motherboard. Case does not include a cutout. You will need to remove your motherboard from the case before installation. Yeah, I know my case has a CPU cutout. Anyhow, it doesn't say anything about the software in here, and I didn't see a disk or anything in here, so I'm sure it's a download thing. If I just look up Corsair's website, I'm sure I'll find it. Okay? It doesn't say anything about it. That's surprising. Okay. Anyhow, I might be missing something in the case, in the box, so let's look through the box. Here we go back to the water cooler again. And nope, no CD, no USB stick, no nothing for software. So, I'll read over everything. I'm sure there's a download for it. So to summarize, I have a water cooler. I want to pull the air through the water cooler, not push it. It doesn't matter if you use 3-pin or 4-pin. Installation looks pretty straightforward. Make sure your case can handle the water cooler before you buy it. Okay? If not, you're going to have to modify your case to handle it. My existing case won't handle this, so I just bought a new case instead of trying to modify it. Okay? So there's everything in a nutshell, conclusion, everything. It comes with fans. The fans have no lights on them. They are not pretty fans. That's irrelevant. I bought fans that are pretty. These fans are not quiet. There are quieter fans on the market. Just make sure you get fans that have static pressure ratings so that you can deal with any problems you might have. Well, let's not say that. Make sure you get static pressure rated fans, and the reason you want that is because you are pushing air through a radiator. You're not just pulling air into a case. So if you do not have static pressure rated fans, you're not going to pull the air through the radiator correctly. The fan just won't be up to trying to push that through, and you will end up with some issues in the long run. So, jumping into water cooling, is it scary? No. This is going to be easy. It's just an installation. It's not going to be a hard installation. Okay? The warranty guide doesn't say anything about software. I'll find it. I'm sure I'm just missing it somewhere and I'm not reading it. Okay? So I'm going to stop here and get busy on something else. Talk to you all later.